The Miami Hurricanes host the Louisville Cardinals under Friday Night Lights. Let's break down the key matchups that will decide this game on this epic Locked On crossover.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Shout out to the everydayers of Locked On Canes and Locked On Louisville on this epic crossover event. I am Alex Donno from Locked On Canes. He is Dalton Pence from Locked On Louisville, and we are available free wherever you get your podcasts, free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the FanDuel app today. On this loaded episode, we'll give you our predictions for Friday night at Hard Rock Stadium. We'll talk the matchups and the keys to the game for both sides, and we'll talk top storylines. And Dalton, I'll give you the floor first. Both of these teams are coming off their bye weeks. Louisville, though, the last time they played was a tight loss. What are the big storylines in your eyes for the Cards heading into this one?
Oh man, I think the main storyline is that how am I going to operate without my normal web camera, right? Let that fall out of my hands on Monday, and it just so happened to shatter either the internals or the lens or both. So working with the new camera, but have to change up my background. So we are currently in the virtual Cardinal Stadium while it's empty this week. But I think that the main storyline for Louisville is consistency, or really lack thereof, right? I mean, overall, you've played 5 games, and I don't think that I've walked away from any of them saying, you know what, that was a really good game for the Cardinals. Like, you've seen the best of them, but you've also seen the worst of them. And frankly, that's what worries me the most about this matchup is, can Louisville put it together for 4 quarters? Another storyline is, just because you have Jeff Brohm, anytime you go up against a team that you are supposed to lose to by the numbers, people are going to bring up the Brohm game. Is this the opportunity this season where Louisville or a Jeff Brohm-led team sort of outkicks their coverage, outplays the other team, and pulls off the upset that you didn't see happening? So I think that it pales in comparison to the inconsistency aspect, truthfully. But the main thing is like, is this the Louisville that we know, right? I mean, like, when someone shows you who they are, believe them, or is there more that we haven't seen that the Cardinals can, reach down deep and pull to the surface? So we'll see what ends up happening on Friday night. But it feels like, Donno, might not be a storyline, but finishing games and bringing that same consistency has been somewhat of a lesser need for the Miami Hurricanes.
Yeah, when you brought up consistency on the Louisville side, it's something Miami fans have thought about as well. I mean, the curve's been a little bit different from Miami because, they are 5-0, they're ranked number 2, and Miami's got 3 ranked wins. Like, they've been fantastic so far this season, but
Right.
There have been moments in games, and it's typically been in fourth quarters. A fourth quarter against Notre Dame when Miami was leading comfortably, but the game still came down to the wire in a game-winning field goal. A fourth quarter against Florida State where Miami had a huge lead. They were up 28-3, took their foot off the gas. Florida State, the game never felt like Florida State was going to win, but they did score 19 unanswered points to make it look a lot closer than the game really was. Yeah. It's kind of a third quarter lull against Florida. So some of those consistency questions have been there on the Miami side as well, just in terms of seeing what the team is capable of when they have dominated in games, and then seeing them suffer some lulls late in games. So that is one of the things that I think Miami fans want to see going for the jugular a little bit more when they have leads and they have opportunities to really finish off opponents. So that's kind of the question mark on the Miami side. In terms of really positive storylines for Miami to this point, the team has been a lot more balanced this year than it was a year ago.
Oh, yeah.
And I think about the matchup that these teams had last season which was a 52-45 slugfest. Like, Miami came out on top, but you were talking about a game that combined for almost 100 points, and there wasn't a whole lot of stopping going on from either team, certainly not from Miami's defense or Miami's special teams, because Louisville had a kickoff return for a touchdown in that game. Miami's defense has been completely different and completely revamped this year. They brought in a new coordinator, Corey Heatherman from Minnesota, who's got them playing really fast and swarming to the football, and the differences have been noticeable. Also, a lot of new personnel, and, not a new player, but Rueben Bain, who's been dominating this year on Miami's pass rush, was injured for most of the season last year. He's fully healthy, and it shows for him. So the team's been a lot more balanced. The offense is obviously not scoring as many points as it was with Cam Ward at the helm last year, but the offense has still been successful, very successful with Carson Beck at the helm. And, I think the other last thing on Miami, Dalton, is, at this point in the season when you're number 2 in the country and you've got a really good resume to this point, there's been a lot of external praise and things, and just the team really trying to block all of that out, right? You don't want to, if you want to avoid big game Brohm having his upset win against Miami this Friday night, these guys are really trying to block out the noise and stay focused. And some of the rhetoric that keeps coming from Miami players and coaches this week is, these same media members who are praising us right now were saying we were going to go 7-5 or 8-4, and we were going to lose to Notre Dame before the season. So if we didn't want to listen to them then, why would we listen to them now? So they're trying to stay focused and not allow any complacency to kick in.
Yeah, I mean, look, I was admittedly, I don't know if you would classify me as media. It's like host a podcast.
You're media. Yeah, we're all media here.
You were on my radio show Monday, which was awesome, by the way. But I think that I was in that same camp of just I had to see it with this team because, you lose the number 1 draft pick. You lose basically all of your offensive production outside of a couple. I knew that you were going to return one of, if not the best offensive line probably in the country. And then defensively, you got to see it. It's like a putt that's longer than 4 feet. Got to see it. And what the new defensive coordinator has been able to come in and do, it seems like he's making things less complicated to where it's easier to communicate and easier just to, hey, I know my job. And a confident Rueben Bain is a force to be reckoned with. But no, I think that I found out early on against Notre Dame, I was like, yeah, this team has got it. It's just a matter of, with the early portion of their schedule looking a little daunting, like, can they go through it? And I was really impressed with how they handled South Florida, because that's a team that could be the group of 5 playoff team come the end of the season. Florida State, they're up and down. I think that they can compete with a lot of teams. I think the floor is a lot lower as well. But overall, like you said, you're a good team. You're a good team. It's a matter of, can you not get too high? Can you not get too low? But for Louisville, I think it's sort of the exact opposite. Is like, it's frustrating because Brohm has always been known as an offensive guy, right? Offensive guru, quarterback whisperer, whatever you want to call it. Defense was always the question coming into this season. And honestly, if it wasn't for Ron English and the Cardinals defense, it might not be a situation where you're 4-1. It might be 3-2 because James Madison was close. And that's still a decent team, but case in point, Pittsburgh got a little interesting. You were down 17-0 in that game. So it's a matter of, can Louisville outplay their own offensive line, right? Their offensive line has been holding them back, and we will talk matchups here in the next segment. But that's the first thing, is, can they play good, like, in spite of the offensive line not being supported by the offensive line? And number 2, can you just finally hit your stride? Because you've got the personnel. There's no doubt about it. You've got ample amount of personnel on offense. You just haven't seen it for whatever reason. I think there's multiple, but it's been frustrating. 5 games into the season, and now you have to rely on a possible get-right game against the number 2 team in the country on the road in prime time on a Friday night. So,
yeah, and I keep saying this all week on Locked On Canes. Games are not played on paper, and Miami obviously has been in far better form, but Louisville has talent, and when we break down the matchups, we'll talk about some of those. Injury reports came out on Wednesday night, Dalton, and on the Miami side, there were no surprises. You got a bunch of players who are out, but most of those are guys we knew that had season-ending injuries going back into training camp. Questionable for Miami is linebacker Bobby Washington. I don't know whether he'll play or not, but, names that we thought might be on the injury report who are not. Running back Jordan Lyle seems fully healthy now. Wide receiver JoJo Trader seems fully healthy now. On the Louisville injury report, I'll let you talk about it. I mean, one notable to me, and I know he's been banged up, but seeing running back Duke Watson listed as out, that was one that jumped out at me.
Yeah, I mean, look, coming off the bye week, you were hoping that the lack of having to go out there and play in a game the week before would help. But I mean, Duke has, and this isn't a fault of his own. Well, let's make this perfectly clear, because he's going out there as a warrior every afternoon or every Saturday afternoon and giving you his all. But he got hurt some point, I believe, in that James Madison game, ended up not playing at all against Bowling Green. Comes in against Pittsburgh. He leaves limping noticeably, comes back in and has some big plays. Sort of the same thing happens against Virginia. So, he's battling that ankle injury. Honestly, and it sucks because missing Miami is not ideal, but I'm thinking long-term health for Duke. I don't want him to put himself in a situation where he's missing the entirety of the season. Like, I'm hoping that, okay, you got the bye week to, recover. Let's take the Miami game and maybe the Boston College game after that and try to get you as close to 100% because we need you. That's been another reason why the rushing attack hasn't been good. But Duke Watson being out, no way around it. It's a tough loss for Louisville. Keywan Brown is probable, who will assumingly be in that backup role for the Cardinals. So different running back profile, right? He's more of a strength guy, but for an offensive line that struggles to open up gaps, you might need that guy that can get a couple yards extra. So not seeing Isaac Brown on this injury report is something that also surprised me, but in a good way. So at this point, the running backs room has been, and I think will continue to be, the injury report topic of conversation.
Well, I have a feeling the trenches are going to be topics of conversation when we break down our matchups coming up. You want to keep it locked right here. This is an epic crossover. We got Dalton Pence of Locked On Louisville. I'm Alex Donno of Locked On Canes. We're only getting started on this epic crossover event. Keep it locked. Folks, this episode is brought to you by Supply House. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Need new parts for a project fast? Supply House has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. The part finder tools and 3D schematics can save you hours on jobs where every detail matters. Join their free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. Oh, we're also brought to you by FanDuel. NFL season is in full swing. College football, I love every second of it. And FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love how FanDuel gives me so many ways to play, and I love all of them. I build parlays. I build player props. I even follow the live lines during games. It makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Thank you so much for making this Locked On crossover your first listen. To the Locked On Louisville everydayers, welcome. To the Locked On Canes everydayers, welcome in. All right, so Dalton, I'll let you start. Now I know that there's definitely good and bad at the line of scrimmage for Louisville, depending on which side of the football you're on. So I'll let you start with key matchups you think could decide this game on Friday night.
Yeah, like you said, it starts in the trenches for Louisville. If the Cardinals want to seriously think about pulling off this upset, they have to, I won't say set the tone, but it has to be a serviceable approach, right? I mean, I think I look back to the game against Clemson last year. On paper, it was an extreme advantage for the Tigers. And what you saw in that game is kind of like what you said. The games aren't played on paper. They're played on grass. And Louisville had a game plan that was centered around taking out that Clemson front seven to where you were able to be successful. So I think that the offensive line, not as good as it was last year, but still sort of the same takeaway is that the Cardinals' offensive line has to be serviceable. They are 112th in the country in sacks allowed, 116th in tackles for losses allowed. I mean, the team in general is 122nd in penalties per game, and a good amount of those come on the offensive line, whether it's false starts, whether it's holdings, you name it. But getting Trevante Sylvester back at left tackle, without a doubt, helps. Was one of the top offensive line performers in the ACC against Virginia a couple weeks ago. So that's a bright spot. But really, I think you mentioned it before the show. It's going to be a lot of quick plays for the Cardinals. Get the ball out in space. That's where you might have the advantage with Chris Bell, who is an NFL wide receiver. Colin Lacey is lightning in a bottle. And doing what you can to try to open up some gaps for your dynamic running back, Isaac Brown. So it starts in the trenches. If you put yourself in a situation to where you are allowing Rueben, Bain, and company to just tee off on Miller Moss and bring the pressure, we've seen that when he gets rattled and lacks that confidence, he tends to make mistakes. If you give him a clean pocket, he's really, really efficient. So it depends on, number one, offensive line play. I think the play calling has to be in tune as well. No long developing routes, no play actions where his back is facing the defense. He has to turn around and Rueben Bain is trying to give him a handshake. I think it starts with the trenches on offense. And here in a minute, we'll talk about it's going to continue on the defensive side as well.
Yeah, just piggybacking on that in terms of Miami's defensive line, they've obviously been really successful this year. And actually, as a preview, before we talk about Louisville's defense, like Louisville's pass rushing grades are like right behind Miami. So these teams both have had a lot of success in that regard. But Rueben Bain especially, but Rueben Bain and Akeem Mesidor have just been game wreckers when it comes to the amount of success they've had with penetration and putting on quarterback pressures. The sack numbers are not as high for Bain as you would think, but it's a little misleading because he's in the backfield on like 80% of the defensive snaps he has, it seems like. Obviously Miami just really trying to completely disrupt Miller Moss's timing and decision-making, like you mentioned. I think it's going to be paramount for the Miami side, and also, trying to get some pressure from the interior as well. I think this is, maybe an opportunity for a guy like David Blay in the interior of Miami's defensive line to hopefully have a good game. And you brought up, when it comes to the perimeter, when Miller Moss, is able to throw, whether it's short stuff or downfield. Chris Bell, the name you brought up, is someone I absolutely respect. And so, like the individual matchup, I would figure there's going to be a lot of Xavier Lucas on him, who's Miami's like most physical corner. So like that individual matchup, I think is going to be something that, is probably right behind the line of scrimmage on things that could decide this game. But, if whoever wins that individual matchup is going to put their team in a really good position. So that's something else that I look at. But then, flipping the trenches to the other side, Dalton, a guy like Clev Lubin, Miami's offensive line has been really good, but this is going to be one of the better, if not the best challenges that they face with the Louisville pass rush. Miami has kept Carson Beck a clean pocket on like 85% of his dropbacks so far, but that's something Louisville's going to try to disrupt.
Is that good? The numbers don't lie, man. Carson Beck is 4 sacks on the year. He's being sacked less than 1 time per game. And we knew coming into the season that, it's like Miami has the Monstars up front in the trenches. And it's proven to be the case. But the Louisville's defensive line, look, Mark Hagan doesn't get enough credit for what he does with this unit year in, year out. It's not really a unit outside of Ashton Gelati in the past and a couple other star edge rushers. Louisville doesn't have many household names on the interior, but man, are they effective. and they're good at defending the run, but also getting after the passer from the interior. So I think you're going to see Clev Rueben because that's what he does, but also understand that it is a by committee approach across the line. They've got guys that can come in and disrupt. Rene Conga, Jordan Gerard, Wesley Bailey, the list goes on. And that's the key for the Cardinals defense, is that you have to get Miami in situations to where it's second and long, third and long. They have Carson Beck, who has been pretty respectable this season. Malachi Toney is a player that I really just don't want to go up against because he's that dynamic. CJ Daniels, the Liberty and LSU transfer, has had a bounce back season in Coral Gables. But the rushing attack, you got Mark Fletcher, Chamar Brown, two guys that, I mean, they're hard to bring down. There's no, arm tackling here. You have to wrap up and bring them down to first contact. And that's kind of where I'm looking at this. Like, if you have a chance, and I believe in Louisville's defense, this is their toughest test of the season, I think, by far, from a physicality standpoint. So all eyes on Ron English's defense. But at the end of the day, there are some recipes for trying to pull off this upset. And not only is it protect Miller Moss and open up rushing lanes, it's also getting after Carson Beck and making him uncomfortable, because he hasn't really been uncomfortable this year. So you have to apply some pressure and try to get him into like a last year mode, making mistakes, because winning the turnover battle is key as well.
Yeah, I mean, you outlined, I think we both outlined some of our keys to the game kind of buried in there. But yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I mean, you mentioned a couple of the names. Miami would like Malachi Toney to keep going, and CJ Daniels. Those have been the two most dangerous weapons in the passing game so far. I think for both sides, and I could say this for Miami, establishing their running game is going to be important, because Louisville's been really good against the pass, and a lot of that comes from the pass rush setting the tone, but 8th in the country in defending the pass. So if Miami's going to get their passing game going, you probably need to get the ground attack going first. And then for Miami, we talked about this a bit in the first segment, consistency is important, because it may take, you've gotten away with being really good for like 3 quarters and beating teams. You may need to be really good for the full 4 quarters to get it done in this one.
I think the main key to victory, there's when you play on the road at number 2, who, and I will mention on the next segment, I truly believe is number 1. I think that it starts with this. You have to stop beating yourselves. Yeah. Because the first 5 games of the season, you've been the most talented team. I don't know if you want to say you're better than Virginia, because better teams don't beat themselves that much. But I think you're the more talented team. And you watch that game and it's pretty clear. I mean, like, the expected win percentage for Virginia was like the lowest in college football up until that point. Louisville gift wrapped Virginia 14 points in the most inexcusable ways. But anyways, in the 5 games, excluding Eastern Kentucky and Bowling Green, the 3 games that have mattered, you've had more talent to be able to overcome your self-inflicting mistakes. James Madison, you were able to overcome the mistakes. Pittsburgh, same thing. Virginia, you almost did. You took them to overtime, but if Miller Moss isn't falling to the ground and trying to throw the ball like Will Levis to the Virginia defender, then Louisville probably wins that game, but shoulda, coulda, woulda. But I make that point to say that you aren't the more talented team on Friday. You're on the road. It's going to be the toughest environment that you've faced, or that you've been a part of at this point. You can't expect to have a chance to pull this game off if you are making those same mistakes. And that means unforced penalties, unsportsmanlike penalties have to stop. Unnecessary roughness, got to stop. The turnovers, the unnecessary turnovers that aren't forced by the defense, that's another thing. And then just the overall, I'll call them play calling blunders, just overthinking, 3rd and 1 and you run a halfback pitch. Mm-hmm. Just run up the middle, man. There's a lot that goes into it, but it starts with, okay, if you want to beat Miami, you can't beat yourself in the process, because you can't beat both at the same time.
Yeah, no, that's very well said. And I'll also say, because I know the Locked On Canes listeners are saying, hey, he's talking about penalties. Miami's also had an issue with too many penalties, is another thing that the Hurricanes would like to clean up. They had 13 penalties for over 100 free yards to Florida State last week. But how's this game going to unfold? We'll have our predictions coming up next. You want to keep it locked right here. Locked On Louisville, Locked On Canes crossover here on the Locked On Podcast Network. This episode is proudly brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS Top Safety Plus pick awards than anyone else. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings this same intention to how we craft every model. You can feel the Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Thank you so much for making this Locked On crossover your first listen. For your next listen, why don't you check out the opposite show? If you're a Locked On Canes everydayer, check out Locked On Louisville. Dalton does an incredible job, and he's been covering this game all week. Locked On Louisville listeners, we'd love to hear from you on Locked On Canes, your team every day. All right, so it's prediction time, Dalton. Friday night under the lights. Friday night games can get wacky, right? I don't know if that means anything for Miami or for Louisville. Maybe this is the big game, Brohm game of the year. How do you think this one plays out?
I mean, and I've had to have this conversation after you appeared on the radio show on Monday, which I appreciate you coming on.
It was a great time
at a late notice, but after that, we had the beginning preview where I discuss main storylines and what's at stake, and then tomorrow's show will be sort of what Louisville needs to do to win this game. I've had some people reach out to me and say, do you think Louisville has a chance of winning this game? I mean, of course they do.
Yeah.
I mean, conference games get weird, like you said, especially when you're playing on Friday night. And with the talent you have on offense, with the defense that you also have, and you've got Jeff Brohm, who has defied the odds and won these types of games. We saw them at Purdue beating Ohio State, 2019 maybe. Louisville beat a top 10 Notre Dame team in his first year. So, like, Brom's MO is you have that trap game, but the give and take is that you also are in a game that maybe you shouldn't. So the Cardinals have the potential to win this game. The issue that I have, it's not just centered around Miami, because Miami, in my opinion, is the number one team based upon the eye test from what I've seen, and also the resume. I think the resume is better than Ohio State's. Miami is my number one team, so in itself, it's going to be challenging to beat a top two team on the road. But the second thing is, I feel much more confident if we had seen some consistent things from Louisville, and that's my issue. That's why I am struggling, because we've seen 5 games of a team that hasn't been able to put it together all 4 quarters. So me hanging my hat on the possibility of that happening in the toughest game of the season, I've got to be realistic. And I want to be a homer as much as I can, but the truth is that I've got to be realistic. I think Louisville has a chance in this game. I don't think it's going to be one of those 30-point games that I've seen Miami fans out there saying. I think of course, there's always possibility because the talent on that team, but I'm going to go. I think it's going to be a little bit more high scoring than some think. It's going to flirt with the over, which I think currently is 52.5. I'm going to go 31-21.
Ooh, Miami. I like it. Yeah, so it's going to be right there. Wow, so right there by that over.
You're sweating it if you got the over.
Yeah. I mean, and I think the next step for Miami is showing that they can be truly consistent through conference play, because it's no secret Miami has never won the ACC. Like, that's I know that because every time I'm on social media, there's a Florida State fan reminding me that Miami has never won the ACC. So being able to find that consistency is important. I do feel like this particular roster, I think, is by far the best Mario Cristobal has had at Miami from top to bottom, and I think these guys have found the right kind of focus. So I'm gonna expect them to take care of business on Friday night. I don't think, again, like you mentioned, if there's Miami fans picking like a 30-point blowout or anything, I'm not quite on board with that, because I do respect Louisville, and I respect the way the conference schedule has been a big issue for Miami over the years. But I'm going to go by virtue of just having the bodies, having the talent, having the strength at the line of scrimmage. Again, on paper, I think Miami's biggest advantage is their defensive line against Louisville's offensive line. I think that's going to be the difference in what's going to make it really tough for Louisville to win this game. As long as Miami's really sharp on special teams, because of course, we all respect Colin Lacey as a return man. He scored a kickoff return against Miami last year. He's taken a couple of punts back this year. So Miami's got to be sharp. But if Miami takes care of business, I see it as about my score's pretty close to yours. I'm going to go 31-17 Miami. So I'm going by about 2 touchdowns. And so, hopefully, and for both sides, I know both sides are looking for that consistency. The Miami side, I hope we see that on Friday. So I'm going 31-17, and I know I'm cutting it close here because it's a 13.5-point spread. So I've got Miami just covering that. You've got Louisville just covering it.
When it comes to the betting lines for this game, don't listen to us. I've got the over. I've got the over/under very close. Donno's got the spread very close. I'm excited for this game, right? I mean, it's going to tell the Cardinal fans that are listening to this show, of course, on the Locked on Louisville page. It's going to tell us a lot about what the rest of the season is going to hold, because even if you lose this game, and look, there's no shame in losing to the number 2 team on the road when you're a double-digit underdog. I would love to see Louisville pull off the upset because it completely changes the dynamic of the season. But hypothetically, if you do lose, I think it's also in the manner of how did you lose, right? Was it where they just completely took away your will to play and beat you by 40, or was it close and in the fourth quarter just Miami ended up pushing across the line? I think it's going to depend, regardless of what the score is, how does Louisville look? Because it's going to tell us a lot about the rest of the season.
Yeah, well said. Well, we appreciate everyone making Locked on Canes and Locked on Louisville your first listen on this awesome crossover episode. Make sure you subscribe to both channels, Locked on Louisville and Locked on Canes. Friday night under the lights, 7 p.m. at Hard Rock Stadium in Miami Gardens. We will talk to you after that epic showdown right here on the Locked on Podcast Network. Your team every day.